Welcome to Celtics Beat, presented by Linda and Casper. This is Jared Weiss filling in for Larry H. Russell. We've got a great show for you. I'm not going to talk too much because we got to get to these interviews. We have ESPN's Amin Ellhassan, their front office insider, really one of the best in the business, one of my favorite people in the NBA analysis game. And then Tom Westerholm, another great reporter. He's with MassLive, Celtics Hub, Hardwood Paroxysm. He's fantastic. We're going to have him on after to talk about the Celtics. Rich Conti here is joining me. Rich, what is our Reach question of the day?
All right, our Reach question of the day is being brought to you by Casper. Casper's mattress is an obsessively engineered mattress using two technologies, latex and memory foam, which come together for better nights and brighter days. It's a comfortable mattress that has just the right sink and bounce. A Casper mattress provides long-lasting comfort and support, and you can buy it easily online and completely risk-free. Casper offers free delivery and painless returns within a 100-day period, so you don't have to lie down in a showroom. Get a Casper mattress for $500 for a twin or $950 for a king-size mattress. And you can save an additional $50 as one of our audience members by going to casper.com/Celtics and entering the promo code Celtics. Our Reach question of the day is, where does new acquisition David Lee fit into the rotation? Do you think he's going to be a starter, key reserve, end of the bench insurance policy, or is he going to be moved as part of some bigger deal? Head over to reach.com, answer our question of the day, and let us know what you think.
Okay, so let's go to our interview with Amin Ellhassan from ESPN, which is brought to you by Audible. Audible is the leading source of audiobooks online with over 180,000 downloadable titles to choose from. That is a lot of titles. So from nonfiction to fiction to periodicals, audiobooks are great to listen to wherever you are and whenever you want. And for our Celtics Beat audience members, Audible is offering you first audiobook for free to give you a chance to try out by simply logging on to audiblepodcast.com/Celtics to claim your free audiobook. So that's audiblepodcast.com/Celtics. Definitely got to do it. So let's go to Amin. All right, Amin. So Deandre Jordan was the center point of one of the most fun days in, I would say, NBA history, and certainly in NBA Twitter history. Just how someone that probably tweets every 15 seconds. How was that for you?
It was funny. I'm probably like the last person in the world to get serious analysis on about the absurd. I keep a light heart around these kind of things. So for me, I was thoroughly entertained. Had a lot of fun with it. When we first heard about, the Doc Rivers trying to reach out to DeAndre Jordan, did the hashtag Doc Begs DJ. I had everyone send in their favorite, baby comeback type of songs, from Boyz II Men to, Chicago and everything.
I had Genuine differences.
Which song did you have? Which Genuine
differences. My whole life has changed. Yeah. There
you go. Yeah, absolutely. Since you came in, yeah, absolutely. So it was, to me, I mean, it was nothing but good fun. But obviously, some people don't have a sense of humor when it comes to these things. I guess.
Now, how can you be on Twitter and not have a sense of humor? That's what I never understood.
Beats me. How can you cover sports and not have a sense of humor? To be honest, I always find it funny how people take this stuff so serious. I mean, sometimes there are serious issues, but at the end of the day, we're talking about some of the most ridiculous stuff sometimes. People getting upset because a guy changed his mind. People getting upset because a guy wants to live somewhere else. It's just ridiculous.
Well, as far as I understand, based on Twitter, DeAndre Jordan was in the middle of a very serious hostage crisis, and his life was at stake multiple times throughout the evening. And I think the moral of the story is he got home safe, and that's what really matters in the end.
Yeah, no, it's funny. On that level, I kind of applaud Blake Griffin because when those reports came out, the pictures that he was sending, they're just it's hilarious. It was basically everybody take a chill pill. Calm down. It's not that big of a deal.
Because we know DeAndre's probably strong enough to pick up the chair and walk out the door.
Yeah, pretty much. Or Mark Cuban is strong enough to break down a glass door with a little chair behind it.
I assume Chandler Parsons is the muscle in that crew anyway for Dallas.
No, he's face. Come on now, he's the face.
The whole Cuban thing was amazing because Cuban is just cyber dusting Deandre. Just please hang out with me just for a few minutes. Deandre's on this really romantic date with Blake Griffin, and in the end,
it was actually with JJ Redick. That's what it turned out to be.
Yeah. But in the end, I thought that it all kind of went a little more public more quickly than these things tend to do. Usually you kind of hear little rumblings or like people said this maybe a year or two out from events like this within the NBA, but we had people going publicly talking about it. I mean, obviously Cubans the probably most apt to talk about things publicly than anyone in the league. But were you surprised by how everybody was just kind of casually talking about it publicly, the way JJ Redick did and Cuban did, right, almost immediately after the fact?
Yeah, it's funny. I think it really has to do with the characters involved.
Mm-hmm.
They're the kind of all the people. We got the perfect mix of extroverts and people with, I guess, very little reticence about sharing personal details or private details or whatever you want to call it. So, I imagine if this were, pick a free agent, if this were LaMarcus Aldridge and it was Portland and San Antonio, we never heard any of these details, right? It would have been all kind of, hush-hush, and maybe rumblings or rumors here and there, and then maybe 5 years, 7 years after LaMarcus is done playing, we get the full details. But yeah, we got the perfect storm of characters involved, and then throw in a dash of social media. So again, for 10 years ago, would this have gone down this way? I don't know.
Mark Cuban is probably the biggest extrovert of the bunch. Blake Griffin, kind of a subtle extrovert. But Deandre, it didn't seem like he really had any... It kind of surprisingly played it more quietly than you would have expected for someone that's never really held back and someone that kind of doesn't take things too seriously, at least in my interactions with him. Do you think that Deandre played it the right way of keeping it quiet until making the statement a couple days later on Twitter?
No. I mean, it was the perfect storm because you have all these extroverts and you got a guy, Deandre, who maybe, I don't like using the word maturity, but basically what was not equipped emotionally to handle the situation. Because if he was, he would have came out right at the beginning and said, hey, man, I changed my mind, and that'd be it. So it needed a victim who was going to be quiet and would hide from it so that everybody else could do the talking and for the whole saga to play out. As far as did he handle it right, I'm just saying I wouldn't have handled it that way. But then again, I've never had to say no to $90 million.
I mean, part of the fallout of this has been a lot of talk about the moratorium period that runs from July 1st to July 9th. People are calling for the NBA to kind of change that, restructure how that works. Do you think that's likely to happen, or is this just kind of just like an isolated case that has a lot of humor to it, so it's getting a lot of attention now, but it's going to recede into the background, by the time the season starts?
It's funny because this is how it always goes in the NBA. We'll have a rule, and the rule works fine, and then there'll be one high-profile exception, and everyone wants to set fire to cars, and it turns into the purge, right? We all just go out into the streets, and there are no laws, right? It's a complete anarchy. So I don't think that we need to change the moratorium. To me, or not to me, I know this is what it's for. It's not for the satisfaction of rumor mills and the press or whatever. The moratorium is there because all the bookkeepers are doing the year-end tallies of all the basketball-related income from the prior season. The fiscal year ends June 30th, so these people are all trying to figure out what the salary cap is going to be, what the luxury tax level is going to be. So without having those definite numbers, you can't have teams signing people to binding contracts when you don't even know if you have the wherewithal to basically make good on that contract. And so, the most I can see is, can we shorten it? Can we hire more accountants and get the bean counters to work 3 8-hour shifts around the clock so that we can get the numbers done quicker? I suppose, but to me, it's just ridiculous that people we need to get one in unless you guys sign right on. I mean, why? Because one dude changed his mind? Really, this is what's coming down to. Because one dude changed his mind, we're going to change the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, to me, if you're going to be out there announcing what's basically a handshake deal, you run that risk. So, if there's a fix here, it's maybe teams think a little bit twice before, proclaiming they've reached these agreement with these guys until they can actually put pen to paper.
And by the way, like, I don't want to make it seem like the Mavs, they messed up or they brought it upon themselves or anything. They got screwed. They got screwed because not because he changed his mind, but because he changed his mind a week later. And a lot happened in that weekend. And by the way, in the first 48 to 72 hours, 90% of the premium free agents were off the market. So I mean, we really got down to the minimum and the kind of taxpayer mid-level type talent pretty quickly. That's as quick as I've ever seen it, to be honest, as far as free agents coming off the board. So that's the thing that makes the situation kind of different as well. So I don't want to put any blame on the Mavericks because obviously they were aggrieved in this situation. But again, this is a really, really unique situation. We can't make knee-jerk reactions based on the exception. The rule can't be changed because of that. The other thing I'll say is I thought the NBPA, the Players Association, the statement they made was very, very active as well. They said part of the reason for the moratorium, from their standpoint, is this is a time for free agents to do visits and get wine and dine and put a lot of thought into their decision, so to shorten that moratorium and make guys kind of put the pressure on them to, hey, you got to sign a deal right now, kind of like a car dealership. That's kind of unfair to the players. So again, I don't think there should be a rule change, but you know how this thing is. People are going to whine and complain and just we're going to get something very specific just because of this one individual.
A lot of people have obviously drawn really faulty conclusions saying that, well, hey, in college they have the letter of intent system, we could just do that in the NBA. The big issue being when you're signing with a team in college, you're not arranging a salary agreement, or well, at least publicly not arranging a salary agreement. So that's a huge variable there that doesn't really apply to the situation.
And there's another thing. And there's a day that we take cues from college basketball on how to do things. That's a sad, sad day.
They should just have a 64-team tournament in March every single year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You get the top teams from the EuroLeague and Chinese League to come over. The biggest way that the Mavs got screwed was that not only is Deandre going back, obviously, but the timing in which they really got at least actionable confirmation was pretty much right up against the end of the moratorium. So if they had gotten word a couple days earlier, they would have at least had a few days to try to make something work. Now, they actually did, considering the situation, to bring in Pachulia for pretty much nothing, and to bring in Darren Williams on essentially a mid-level, which, say what you want about Darren Williams, but considering the situation, I think those are two pretty good moves. But they could have at least had more time during the moratorium period to really work on a free agent, like Cantor, for instance, although it's not really apparent whether or not they were ever interested. And probably, I don't think anybody really wanted to pay Cantor the max. But they could have, Deandre could have at least seen the situation as, hey, I'm screwing him over, but at least the right thing to do here would be to let them know as soon as possible so that they have more time to find some sort of alternative. But that didn't happen.
Yeah, it's like I said, the fact that the first 72 hours saw most of the, decent free agents go off the market really made it tough. It's not so much that it happened at the end of the moratorium. It's that it happened after every free agent had already made a decision. That's what it was. I think the moratorium here, isn't as important so much as the fact the market had moved forward, mm-hmm. and it took him basically 8 days or 7 days to change his mind.
Do you think he made the right call in the end?
Yeah, he's way more suited to be a Clipper. He fits perfectly. I mean, it's the perfect role. They hide his weaknesses. They accentuate his strengths. The coach / GM praises him more than probably anybody else on the roster. I mean, he lives in LA. I don't know what more he could have wanted other than proximity to mom, but he's got enough money now that mom can live whatever the hell she wants. But going back to what you said about Dallas, were they good recovery moves? Sure, but I'm wondering, where does that leave them? You think they're a playoff team? I don't think so.
Barely, if even, but probably not.
So to me, I would have taken that. I mean, I know it's hard to ask a guy like Dirk to waste another year of his career, but essentially that's what's happening anyway. So basically, you're just cosmetically trying to trick him into thinking, "Oh no, Dirk, we're really trying everything to get you one more chance." But really, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that they're a very good team or a very deep team, and that's even beyond doing a critical deep dive on Deron Williams. How effective can he be? Is he a guy that is he? Because I don't think Deron Williams is like Joe Johnson. I think Joe Johnson is a great player who is forever underrated because his salary makes people kind of gasp in disgust or whatever. I don't think Deron Williams is a top 15 point guard. I could probably name 15 point guards right now. I'd rather have Deron Williams at any salary.
Probably 20, maybe even 25.
I don't know. I won't push the 25, but definitely, I think I'd go 15, and before I get to Deron Williams. And so you're talking about a guy who's at the top half at his position, and Zaza Pachulia, again, he's a serviceable big, but he's not incredible. He's not, and he definitely isn't good enough defensively. I don't think to make up for Dirk's shortcomings or whatever. Or those are the rest of the roster, to be honest, because it's not like they have a bunch of defensive stalwarts that they're rolling out there. So it just, I don't know what direction they're headed. It just seemed like a kind of, is the term Pyrrhic victory? I'm trying to be smart there. Maybe not. Let me leave the smart terms to Ethan Strauss, and I'll stick to, those kind of emotional, they did the wrong thing.
Is there any chance we get to January and Dallas is clearly out of it and they decide maybe to move Dirk to a contender to give him one last shot at a ring?
I think Dirk would have to say, move me to a contender. I think, to be honest, if he said that at any time, they would honor that request.
Joel Embiid, the news is just coming out that it looks like he's not going to play again this year. And usually, guy misses 1 year, there's optimism. Misses another full year, that's when you start to kind of raise the red flag. Where are you at with Joel Embiid right now? And what do you think this impacts Hinkie's next step?
I mean, first of all, I always sympathize for players whose careers are cut short due to factors outside their control, so injuries and stuff like that. So, I always say this a lot. One of my favorite players of all time is Grant Hill, and it bothers me that he didn't have the career he was supposed to have because of injuries, pretty much. Because of he literally did everything the right way.
Yeah, and that would have been like a top 20 career probably for anyone that's too young to really remember that's listening.
No, like Grant Hill was LeBron before LeBron.
Yeah.
In terms of, and probably better equipped to be LeBron than LeBron, because Grant, such a strong character guy in terms of, he's a leader. He put his, he didn't shy away from pressure. He didn't shy away from the tough, like you have a bad game, he's there. He wasn't condescending to teammates. He's the best teammate in the world. If you had to create a player in a lab, it would be Grant Hill. Like the ideal player, the guy that you want to represent the face of the league. Like it was Grant Hill. And especially at a time where, nowadays I always say we're blessed now. We have so many good guys who are the face of our league. I think LeBron's a good guy, even though he's got his own little issues sometimes. But Durant and Anthony Davis, these are all great dudes. Steph Curry, these are great. These are the people you want to represent your sports league. But like back then, it was kind of like a grab bag of dudes, man. And so Grant Hill was he was the chosen, so to speak, and he got hurt, and it just was never the same. But even beyond Grant Hill, you got guys like Brandon Roy and Greg Oden. I just always feel for guys whose careers don't work out because of injury. You know, again, when it comes to Embiid, I just hope that this is, you know, I remember Zydrunas Ilgauskas, his first few years in the league, like he barely played because he kept getting hurt.
Yeah.
And it was one of those, like, oh, he's a 7-footer, he's got foot problems, he'll never play. And then he hit a stride, and then, you know, it's like, it's a distant memory, you know. I guess because a lot of people don't even remember his foot issues earlier in his career. So, you know, you hope that that's the case with Embiid, and he's not gonna, you know, he's not gonna basically stop his NBA career before it even ever started. But as far as Sam Hinkie goes and the Sixers go, you know, it just it highlights, to me, this highlights the risk of doing it the way they're doing it, which is this whole, we're just going to keep amassing assets and all that. I mean, because you're basically banking on, okay, one of these guys is going to turn out okay. But what if he doesn't, right? At some point, you have to have something to show for to your owner, to your fan base, whoever, saying, look, we're doing everything we're trying to do to win. You know, you can't just say, well, we weren't going to win anyway, so we might as well be awful and keep getting high picks. I mean, I guess you could, but at some point that reservoir of patience runs out. And you know, you have to pay the piper, so to speak. And that's why, you know, I really admire what Danny Ainge has done in Boston, because they're reloading, rebuilding, whatever, and they're focused on youth and development and all that stuff. But they're managing to be competitive while doing that. And they're in a great situation, because right now, if I'm a team, I have a disgruntled superstar, and Philadelphia calls me, and Boston calls me, I think I'd rather take Boston's call. Because, sure, you know, Philadelphia has a lot of picks. But Boston can give me players who can play right now. And when you're losing a star, you want guys who can come in and contribute for you. You know, so to me, I think that's a more attractive proposition, not only for the team and the fan base, but for other, you know, in gearing yourself to be attractive as a trade partner for other teams.
Especially because with Boston, when you're trying to do a deal with them, they can offer you good picks and they can offer you good players that will most likely be role players or supporting casts on your team right now. But if you're trying to rebuild and you're trying to get rid of a star player, usually you're trying to find some sort of fresh start while maintaining some sort of positive momentum. So with the Celtics they're really deep with guys that would be good fourth options, fifth options on solid teams. That's why they're not that great right now, because it's all fourth and fifth options. But if you're a team trying to make a deal with Boston, they're one of the most attractive trade partners across the league.
Absolutely, and for all those reasons, I just named. You know, it's a better value proposition.
Yeah, I mean, do you think folks are starting to rethink that common wisdom that, you know, the worst place you can be is right that NBA purgatory, that 7th or 8th seed, the 40 to 45 win range, and realizing that, you know, winning 40 to 45 games isn't inherently a bad thing. It's when you're sacrificing future flexibility, overloading your cap, locking into players who aren't, you know, for the long term, who aren't going to get you where you need to be, and only winning 40 to 45 games. That seems to be what the issue is. And the Celtics, you know, you can argue whether they've managed to do that, but they're at least trying to avoid that kind of lock-in and lack of flexibility, even while they're trying to remain competitive.
So the irony is, the guy, I think, who coined the phrase treadmill of mediocrity is Daryl Morey. Was he the first guy to say that?
I think so.
And he's never tanked. He's never tanked. Like, but again, that, you know what it highlights? It highlights the lack of nuance sometimes in our discussion, whether it's in the media or whatever, because I think teams have known that. Mm-hmm. Or I hope, you know, some teams have known that. Like, you know, it's not that 45 wins is bad. It's 45 wins is bad when you're paying $12 million a year to Joe Wallace and $15 million a year to Joe Johnson. Like, you know, that's when it's bad. It's because it's not that you guys, you know, you're not winning, you know, the lottery and you're not going to win a playoff series. It's that you've gone all in on vets who won't get better. Like, that's it. The team is done improving, and that's the cardinal sin.
You know, Ainge is trying to do something that Morey essentially did, and Morey was able to do it incredibly because he transitioned out of an era that essentially just couldn't live up to it because of injuries with T-Mac and Yao. He was able to keep the team afloat while just drafting phenomenally well, just continually picking really good guys in the middle of the first round and early in the second round, and he had his opportunity to pounce with Harden, and he had the assets in place to be able to make it work. And you know, looking back at what they offered at the time, which seemed like it was probably a little light for what we thought Harden was, and especially who he turned out to be, it's hard to imagine many teams really seeing a trade with that level of assets happening again. But, and especially considering the ransoms that were being demanded out of Ainge and a lot of other GMs during the draft. But the Celtics have a similar package being set up here, where they're drafting fairly well with a bunch of solid players, and we'll see what happens with Rozier and Hunter. But he's in the position where he has a bunch of solid young guys and some really attractive-looking, probably high first-round picks coming up in the next couple of years. So he's really ready to make a similar offer to what Morey made.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's not just him. I think if you look at what Phoenix is doing, if you look at, you know, there's a couple of teams out there.
Pretty much any former Ainge assistant GM.
You know, Milwaukee, you could make the case for them. At some point, they're going to package a bunch of guys and trade them away. You know, so there's a few teams around the league that are all kind of adopting that strategy, and I think it's a win-win strategy. You're not sacrificing competitiveness. Your fans can still feel engaged and optimistic about the future. I mean, you talk to Philly fans, man. It's just the weirdest thing. You know, they're losing games. And, oh, good, trust the process. This should never be just on a meta level, right? Like if we take a step back and look at the big picture, we should never be in a place in sports where people are actively rooting for their teams to fail. Like if the incentive structure is broken, if that's what we have. And to hear, you know, I don't know if you guys ever seen this movie called Kung Pao. It's a really, really dumb movie where they basically picked this old karate flick and they dubbed over it, you know, with their own. But in Kung Pao, they have this one character who, the monks basically, as a joke, trained him to think when he's losing a fight, he's actually winning. So, like, he gets in a fight with a guy, and the guy kicks him in the face, and he looks at him and he laughs, like, ha-ha, how'd you like my face-to-foot style? And that's what it feels like, you know, for the Celtics fans. Like, you know, oh, yeah, how'd you like that? We lost 17 in a row. About to make it 18. Holler! Like, it does not make sense. And then it goes back to, again, you can have all the draft picks you want, and you can do all the scouting you want. You can pick them right, and then the kid gets hurt, and just keep getting hurt, and you're stuck. You're stuck. You got nothing to show for pretty much, what was it, not 2 years of being awful? 3 years of being awful?
3 years, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so lastly here, Summer League. I know you've been there for less than 24 hours pretty much. I appreciate you talking to us while I assume you're hungover beyond comprehension. But we saw some interesting guys playing. Robert Upshaw is probably the guy I want to watch the most because I'm fascinated by that storyline there, and especially since
that's who you want to watch the most.
Yeah, are you kidding me?
Robert Upshaw more than anybody else. Like,
more than anybody else.
I can't get enough Robert Upshaw.
I mean, Russell and Towns are great and everything, and Randall's was really fun to watch last night. But I am so fascinated by what's going on around Robert Upshaw, and I was surprised he didn't get drafted at all. But who has been the person you've enjoyed watching so far in the overall summer leagues, and who do you look forward to watching the most coming up besides Robert Upshaw?
Overall, you know, Kyle Anderson for San Antonio, I watched on TV. I watched him at Utah, and I just love his game. I'm a sucker for skill and for guys who know how to play. And, you know, athleticism kind of comes secondary to me behind those things. I love the thinking man's game, and Kyle Anderson he's brilliant out there. He's just so smooth and so poised and really, really slow, but uses it to an advantage, and that's something we don't see very often.
He's a perfect Spur.
But as far as who I'm excited to watch, no, it's not Robert Upshaw. I'm excited to watch Kristaps Porzingis. I'm excited to watch Moutier. He played yesterday. I was on the plane, though, so I missed it. I'm excited to watch, let's see, who else? I mean, there's a bunch of guys all throughout, really, the first round that I want to watch. And then I also have some vets I want to watch, guys, second-year guys. I want to see if they've taken the next step, kind of like Anderson did. Like, what you want out of your second- and third-year players is there is to basically look like they shouldn't be there. So guys like Archie Goodwin, guys like Rodney Hood, like who else am I thinking about? Man, I'm gonna keep. So this is a great segue. Kevin Pelton and I had a fantasy draft.
Oh yeah, I heard about this. Hashtag Team K Pelton.
Yes, and or as someone pointed out, it seemed like Tank Pelton is the appropriate hashtag. But yeah, so you know, we both drafted 8-man rosters, and you know, we're going to be tracking them and seeing how they do, and then they're going to like tally up some imaginary counting system. But you know, here we go. I have Jordan Clarkson on my team. Okay, I got what other vet do I have? Let's see. Oh yeah, Clarkson and Goodwin are the two guys that I have that I'm interested in watching. Pelton has Hood. He has Kyle Anderson and Doug McDermott. That's another one. So it'll be just interesting to see how those guys do. All the second-year players, but as far as the rookies, Porzingis is the guy. I got him circled on my schedule.
So you can find him at ESPN Amin or at Amin ESPN? I always forget which way around.
Amin ESPN, because I'm the kind of guy who puts myself ahead of the team.
That's right. There is no I in team, but it's pretty close to an Amin in team, I guess. So it's close enough. Yeah.
Well, and there's an I and Amin, and that's the most important.
That's the only thing that matters. All right, man. Thank you so much for joining us on Celtics Beat. Enjoy Vegas. There's going to be a lot of fun. All right, well, that's it for our interview with Amin, which is brought to you by Audible.com. Let's go to a commercial break, and then we'll be back with Tom Westerholm, which is presented to you by DraftKings.
This is Larry H. Russell back here again, and let me tell you a little something about me. I'm always reading a book, or 3. Be it a revolutionary breakthrough on neuroscience such as Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow, or even a philosophical masterpiece like Plato's The Republic, I'm always doing whatever means to soak up as much knowledge as I can about the world we live in. And we can't do that without literature. But not everyone finds it convenient to carry around all 6 volumes of the history of the decline and fall of the Roman Empire with them. But there's a solution. My good friends over at Audible. Audible is a leading provider of audiobooks with over 150,000 downloadable titles across all types of literature. You don't need to be all alone creating that impossible private time with our everyday lives of chaos to do some reading and relaxing. Audiobooks are great to listen to wherever, be it in the gym, doing chores at work or around the house, driving, riding, shopping, whatever. Audiobooks are the remedy for you. And Celtics Beat and Audible are teaming up to offer you your first audiobook for free. Just go to audiblepodcast.com/Celtics. That's audiblepodcast.com/Celtics.
Hey, this is Nick Gelso, co-owner and founder of CLNS Radio. Today's podcast is brought to you by Lynda.com. Lynda.com is the home of expert video tutorials. Because you're such a loyal listener of CLNS Radio, and it's 2015, you want to kick the new year off in style, claim your free trial today from CLNS by going to Lynda.com/CLNS. That's LYNDA.com/CLNS.
Our next guest is Tom Westerholm, and our interview with Tom is presented today by DraftKings. Earlier this year, DraftKings celebrated golf's first 2 majors by crowning the first ever fantasy golf millionaires. And with their 3rd major starting next week, DraftKings is picking up right where they left off by doling out $3 million in prizes and crowning fantasy golf's next millionaire. DraftKings.com is America's favorite one-week fantasy golf site where you can win huge prizes every tournament. So whether you live and breathe golf or you just love the thrill of fantasy sports, DraftKings lets you experience the game in a whole new way by playing to win $1 million. Just pick 6 golfers, pile up the points, and pick up your cash. That's it. This is the biggest one-week fantasy golf contest ever. The event begins with the tournament, so choose your players before next Wednesday night, and there could be a giant check with your name on it Sunday afternoon. Hurry to DraftKings.com now and use promo code New England to play for free for a shot to become a millionaire. Enter New England now at DraftKings.com.
So we're joined by Tom Westerholm from MassLive. He is in Vegas right now with a pretty nice view of the pool at his hotel. How are you liking Vegas in the first 24 hours?
You know, I'm not really the Vegas type personality. I'm much more of a walk my dog in the woods kind of personality. But I'm not going to lie, when you look out the window and you see like a really nice pool and that skyline, it's pretty great. It doesn't suck. So that's what I got going for me.
It's Vegas, so I'm pretty sure there's some like fake forest somewhere where you can rent a dog to walk. Like they have pretty much everything. It's like Dubai. It's crazy. That's
a solid point, and now I'm going to have to look into that. So thanks for tying up my Saturday evening.
So speaking of tying up our evenings, we've been watching the Summer League, which it's amazing how nowadays in the NBA, you only go like a few weeks without games, and then all of a sudden Summer League is here. It's incredible. This is why I love covering the NBA. You really only take the month of August off. So the Celtics have played 3 games so far. Am I getting that right? And Marcus Smart has been pretty. I don't think he's been amazing. I think he's been fascinating so far. But there's obviously a lot of issues with the 3-point shot being the main one. But we're seeing progress, and it's definitely going to be interesting. We've seen pretty much everybody we wanted to see play so far, except for Colton Iverson, because he decided to take a deal overseas, which obviously was the right move for him. You realize he wasn't going to be ever getting on the roster. But so, starting with Smart, what has been your impression so far?
I've been really impressed with Smart. Obviously, like you said, his shot is still kind of an issue. He really was shooting extremely well in that last game, at times in Utah. I think, obviously, the biggest thing with Smart is that, last season he didn't drive to the hoop very much. And that was something that kind of picked up a little bit toward the end of the year. Not a ton of people really made much noise about it because he kind of had his reputation already as the guy who doesn't drive to the hoop. But he did start to take it to the hole a little bit more. Really, I think the most encouraging thing you can say about Smart's performance has been the fact that he's been attacking the hoop, he's been kicking out to shooters, and just that attention that he draws when he just goes like a bowling ball toward the basket is really important. And I've been really impressed with that and how concentrated he's been on improving that aspect of his game.
It looks like his ability to shoot in the paint has improved because the biggest deterrent for him not driving at least the first half of the year was that he didn't have the lift because of that ankle injury. So when he was getting into the paint, he felt like he couldn't get a shot off. We're seeing, I would say, moderate strides in that area. We're seeing that he can get in there. He can feel comfortable trying to change direction on the dribble, which is really crucial for a point guard. And he shows that he can at least try to shoot over some centers, which he just was not doing last year. So, do you think it's looking like something that will translate to the regular season? Because we all know Summer League is fun and all, but you very rarely ever see anyone do anything they did in the Summer League in the regular season.
Well, that's true. During the Summer League last year, we saw him taking a lot of jumpers. We didn't see him attacking the hoop very much. So I am encouraged. I think that there's a good chance that we'll see some of it translate. And like you said, it's he's going up against Summer League centers. I think the thing that I would like to see a little bit more of, you're seeing him, pull up for some floaters, that kind of thing. We're still not really seeing him, go full force toward the basket, for the layups. He's kicking out, which is great, and that's something that he really has needed to do. But I think it would be nice to see him, try to finish at the rim a little bit more, and that's something that I don't think we'll see from him yet this year, just based on the Summer League performance. I mean, if he's not doing it in Summer League, he's probably not going to do it during the regular season. But I do think that the drive and kick stuff will translate, just because, he's got the strength to, muscle his way around people. He's got the strength to get into the lane and to kind of collapse the defense. And I think he will have that strength, for the regular season as well. It's not just Summer League strength, I guess.
But he's also showing passing, and not the way that he was doing it last year, but he's showing the ability to go into the late transition, kind of feel the rhythm of when they can attack the defense as it's kind of sitting back into transition. and he's making nice plays. He's making plays where he's cutting across the lane and throwing it to guys cutting the other way, stuff like that. More complex reads, stuff like that you need your point guard to be able to do. And that it was probably the main reason why he wasn't playing point guard last year, was because he couldn't make complex read passes, and we're seeing it starting to happen now.
Yeah, he had that one in that game on Thursday, I guess it was, where he pulled back in delayed transition and kind of looked the other way and then just flicked it to the guy under the basket through a couple of defenders. I mean, that's definitely not something we would have seen last year. And I'm sure some of that, when you're playing in Summer League and you're Marcus Smart and you know that you are, the best player on the floor, the focus of the team, you kind of, I think you probably have a lot of confidence, and that confidence is, it's just kind of like, I'm the focal point. I get to do kind of what I want to do. If I turn the ball over, it's not the biggest deal in the world because I'm still Marcus Smart and I'm still the best player on the floor. I think, we're definitely seeing some of that swagger from him. I hope that carries over, because even if he's not the best player on the floor during a regular season game, he kind of needs to have that mentality where he knows that, okay, if I make a mistake, it's not the biggest deal. It's my second year now. This is my team. I'm, the prospect of the future. And I think that kind of goes into the complex reads. You have to have confidence to be able to make those passes, to take those risks. And I think we're starting to see that, manifest itself in his game right now.
So how big of an improvement do you think he's made?
I think it's going to be significant. I don't know that we're going to see a ton more points necessarily from him, but I do think that we'll see an upgrade in his assists. And I think just kind of from watching the games, you'll see the way that he impacts the floor, the way he impacts the team schematically. I think that we're going to see, I think that we'll see three-point shooting, the percentages when he's on the floor. I think, if you take an in-depth look at those, I think we'll see a bit of a rise in those this season, just because I think he's going to be able to create for people better, and that's going to open up the floor. That's going to do really nice things for, hopefully these guys that they brought in to knock down three-pointers.
So he is shooting the ball. Terry Rozier is shooting the ball a little bit, but when Terry Rozier attacks the basket, he is so explosive through the three-point line, and then things get really, really messy really, really quickly. And it's been really fun to watch. I mean, it's really interesting to see how he can just blow through the perimeter defender, and then when he gets close to the rim, he will lose the ball. He'll get really scared. He'll get confused. He'll put up a bad shot. I mean, he looks so I guess raw, but also incredibly explosive. It's kind of like watching James Young last year, really.
Yeah, it is, and it's interesting too. I mean, Stevens and pretty much everybody in the Celtics higher up keep using the word burst with him, and I feel like at this point, all we've really seen is burst. So yes, I mean, he absolutely has burst, and it's fun to watch. But I feel like that's almost kind of the buzzword that they used, almost as like a code of yeah, he's got burst. He doesn't really have anything else at the moment, but we're hoping that the burst, translates into the future. You're absolutely right that he looks kind of confused, and he's a rookie, playing against really stiff competition, guys who desperately want roster spots. So he's definitely coming up against probably the toughest competition of his career. So I'm willing to cut him some slack at this point on that score, obviously. But the raw stuff that's there is definitely there, and it's definitely intriguing, and you can kind of see, you can think that the Celtics reached on him, but you can also kind of see, maybe where they saw something in him that they didn't want to risk losing him, by trying to take him with a lower pick.
Yeah, Tom, a lot of the negative reaction around that pick centered on, sense of duplicity between Rozier and Smart. What do you think? I mean, I know it's early, only been 3 games, but can these two guys coexist in a backcourt, or particularly as part of a three guard rotation? I think there are some, obviously they're both great physical players, very defensive, but I think there are some differences to their game that I think they could coexist. Well, what are your thoughts?
I agree. I especially think that they could coexist on the defensive end. Smart is big enough that he can guard a lot of shooting guards, I think. And I think that's more what the Celtics are worried about than them coexisting on the offensive end. Stevens just likes to have wings and, a ball handler. He likes to have, guys who can do multiple things. And Smart obviously can. I think, Rozier he's just too small to be a shooting guard, but, he's a good defender. I think that offensively, it could be a little bit awkward just because we're still not, completely sold on Smart's three-point shot. And people have talked about how Rozier's shot could be good. I'm really not sold on it yet. he's so young, and it's his summer league. Like, you can't write off his jumper yet. But I'm not sold on that ever being a real, impact factor for him. But I do like the idea of having the two of them and having that versatility, and then also having the versatility with those two to, maybe somebody makes a great offer on Avery Bradley, and as much as the Celtics like Avery Bradley, he's not indispensable. And I think that this kind of opens that up for them. This kind of gives them that option where if, somebody comes after one of their wings, if somebody comes after one of their guards, they can really, everything's interchangeable. They can just kind of do whatever they need to do, to try to improve the roster at this point. I think that's what Rozier brings to them mostly. But to answer your question, I do think that him and Smart will be an intriguing duo going forward.
Yeah, Rozier's release point on a shot is surprisingly low for a guy that has such long arms.
It is.
I'm wondering if they're going to be able to move it back up above his head, like most guys with long arms tend to do.
It's interesting. RJ Hunter kind of has the same thing, right? Like he kind of shoots it out in front of him a little bit. I was watching him at shoot around today, and he's taking these shots from like almost 30 feet and just swishing all of them, but it's kind of out in front of him a little bit. It's kind of interesting that the two guys they picked in the first round both have kind of a weirdly low release point. But yeah, I mean, you would imagine that they would try to work with Rozier on that because it is too low, and he does have those crazy long arms, and mechanics are definitely something that he's going to need to work on. But I don't think it's broken. I do think that it's somewhat fixable here.
Speaking of Hunter, he came in from the draft with a reputation, obviously, of being a scorer and looked pretty tentative the first couple of games. What were your perspective on kind of his little bit of reticence to shoot?
I think it's pretty natural for a shooter in a new situation to not be totally comfortable. I mean, if you think about a guy just in like a normal pickup game who's a shooter, it's going to be tough. People might not know exactly where he wants it, exactly how he runs the floor, exactly where he's going to be cutting it at various times. And it can be tough to get into a flow of the game when your main goal is to just shoot the ball. And you also have to keep in mind that Hunter was the number one option at Georgia State. So, coming into this system, and for him as well, he's not going to be quite as comfortable, doing the various things that he's asked to do as a secondary part of the offense. I think that once he gets acclimated, he's a very smart basketball player. Once he gets acclimated and once people start to get acclimated to him, I don't think there's going to be too much reticence on his part to just kind of fire those shots up. He's an incredible shooter, and I think once he kind of gets used to the role of being a spot-up guy who just kind of finds the places on the floor where people are going to be looking for him, I think that there's going to be a significant improvement and just a nice fit for him with the Celtics rotation.
So you think that could be the end of the Trash Brothers as we know it? Then we might see
the
some
Trash Brothers. Yeah, I think so. I'm worried about James Young, but I think I think it might maybe the one of the Trash Brothers I think is moving in the splash kind of direction.
So James Young is not. He's not splashing yet. There's obviously
he's not lighting the world on fire. No,
but he looks physically better. There's no what he was saying about gaining the muscle mass. I mean, you see the difference. He doesn't look like a shrimp out there. But skill wise, it's just not. It's not honed at all, really, right now.
I mean, it's interesting to wonder how worried you should be about that because he's still the youngest player on their summer league roster. Like he's still incredibly young, and he's basically a rookie. You don't want to get to the point where you're making so many excuses for a guy that that you're kind of overdoing it. But he does have some built-in excuses still. He's still really, really young, and I mean, he's still really inexperienced. So, I mean, it does look like he's trying to force the issue a lot of the time. It looks like he's been told, okay, here's what we want to see from you, and then he thinks, well, maybe I could do a little bit more of this too, and then tries to take some bad shots in the lane. He looks like he's just kind of playing out of himself right now, and that's not a good thing. But I think it's definitely not panic time. But if you want to be concerned, that's fair. But I don't think it's time to be like, wow, they really wasted that pick.
Well, no, it's like he was a 3 to 4 year project when they drafted him.
Of course.
He essentially said so. People forget when you draft a project that it takes more than 1 year.
Right.
People will freak out when a guy comes back the second year and he's terrible. No, maybe
and you know who I
that's
blame
Jawan
for that?
Johnson syndrome, but who knows?
Right. I was actually going to say, I mean, not Jawan Johnson, but you know who I blame for that is Fab Melo, because we were all told, Fab Melo is a project type player, and then it turned out that by project they just meant that he is can't play. So, I mean, I think people kind of look at that with James Young and they think, oh, well, maybe I don't think he can play either, but he's not Fab Melo. Like, there's legitimate basketball skills there that I think can be sorted out, and I think that it's definitely too early to panic at this point.
All right, so David Lee trade. We got to talk about this. It's going to be fascinating. So Mickey, I mean, sure, they could just start Mickey right away, but they also could put in David Lee. David Lee, very interesting option for them. He's probably the best offensive player on the team besides Isaiah Thomas right now. And, of course, a healthy Jared Sullinger could probably compete with him. But they have so many...
And by healthy, I assume you mean skinny.
Yeah. Well, that too, sure. Well, hey, I mean, Sullinger was pretty good even at the shape he was in before, just that it wasn't sustainable at all. But is David Lee going to start for this team? I wouldn't expect it because I assume Sullinger is going to be good to go, and I don't think they're going to put those two out there together. They're probably going to put out Zeller or Olynyk. But there's a chance that David Lee could go from not playing at all in Golden State to starting on this team.
I kind of disagree with you that you don't think he will. I think, maybe not at the outset because, I think Stevens I feel like Stevens is the kind of coach who likes to reward people who did really well.
Yeah.
And I think you don't want to give up on Zeller after he contributed all season last year. He was Tyler Zeller, so he's not incredible, but he was very solid, and he just kind of did his role every night. And I think Stevens is the kind of coach who wants to reward that and wants to give him a chance. But David Lee is so much better than most of this roster. He's going to fit nicely into Stevens' system. In a lot of ways, he's going to do kind of like a poor man's version of what would have made Kevin Love such a great fit. That high post passing, the pick and roll big, and obviously he's not as much of a pick and pop guy, but he rolls to the basket really nicely. He's got a really good post game. I think he might not be a starter at the start of the season, but I have a hard time seeing him not play his way into that role, with the Celtics, especially since this team is clearly looking to push, for another low playoff spot, presumably because they have all these draft picks, that could pan out for them this season. But I agree that he's going to be really good. I actually think that he will be starting, within a month or two.
Yeah, I kind of think the Lee and Johnson pairing at the 4 and 5 is probably the Celtics' best front court option at this point.
I agree. Yeah, I definitely agree, and I think between the two of them, that speaks well for the Celtics free agency. They didn't get any of the top guys. We weren't really expecting them to, but they still managed to pull out two guys who are probably their best big men. That speaks pretty well for their work, especially since they managed to maintain all their flexibility. If they want to, they can let both guys go at the end of the season and have an extra $27 million? Is that between the two of them?
Yeah.
So, that's not bad work in off season. If depending on what you're trying to do, and from what the Celtics seem to be trying to do, that's a solid group.
And so, last question here. I was trying to name who would start at center. Somehow, I forgot the subject of this question. Amir Johnson, the newest guy on the team. So, I know he's only 6'9", but obviously he's going to be the center on this team. And they pay $12 million, which is a lot of money to pay to a guy that doesn't average 10 and 10. But from all accounts and from everything that I've seen, and I'm sure everything that you've seen, Amir Johnson is a very effective player out there. And especially being on this team, he's probably going to be putting up better numbers than he was in Toronto. But do you think that it was a really good signing, or are you satisfied with the move?
I think it was a great signing. I was really confused why everybody. I wasn't actually confused. I know that Celtics fans wanted a bigger splash than Amir Johnson. On the what was it, the second day of free agency. But he's such a solid player, and when you look at his per 36 numbers, and I know nobody likes to look at that because it's not a sexy production, but his per 36 numbers are really good, and this is going to give him a chance to really contribute. If the Celtics want to keep him around another year, they can. That's the beauty of that option there. Last season it was on very few attempts, but he actually shot 41% from 3-point range. So not that he'll tease that out and continue to shoot 41%, but it's still something where he can clearly stretch the floor if he needs to. He's got a varied skill set. He's going to be the kind of guy that Celtics fans really like. He works really hard. From all accounts, every Toronto person loved him. I think he's going to be a really nice addition And that still keeps that all-important flexibility open if a bigger fish comes along that Danny Ainge wants to, try to hook on his lure of assets and picks and everything else. So I think it was a great signing. I was really impressed with it, and I think it demonstrated a lot of patience and a good eye for Danny Ainge to go out and get that guy who might not be the exact kind of asset or the exact kind of player they're looking for, but still adds quite a bit to the team.
All right, you can find him on Twitter at Tom_NBA. When we go to your Twitter, what are we going to be seeing from you in the next few weeks?
You'll be seeing a lot of Summer League. I'm out, like you said, I'm out here in Vegas. I'll be covering the Celtics. I'll be doing some other work as well. It'll be from MassLive, for Celtics Hub, probably some stuff for Hardwood Paroxysm. So it'll be kind of all over the place, but I would say that, the biggest things will be MassLive and Celtics Hub. So there will be plenty of Celtics stuff coming down the pike here.
All right, I'm going to read every single word that you write now until September. Don't worry.
All right, thank you.
Are you looking to lose weight, burn fat, pack on muscle, or just live a healthier life by sleeping better and worrying less? Well, aren't we all? Unfortunately, we've spent years quibbling over phony studies, fad diets, and dangerous prescription drugs that have prevented us from living our lives to the fullest and have done more harm than good. But thankfully, science has prevailed, and we now know that there is no other way in achieving optimal health than by consuming what nature has to offer us in its purest form possible. Hi, I'm Larry H. Russell, host of Celtics Beat and critically acclaimed author of Fall of the Boston Celtics. And let me tell you about Dr. Ron's Ultra Pure Nutritionals. Dr. Ron supplements are 100% additive free, and best of all, they work. Dr. Ron supplements are my personal go-to for anything from post-workout recovery to achieve optimal gains, all the way to stress management. So if you're not getting the results you want from maddening forms of dieting and dealing with adverse side effects from other harmful drugs, remember one thing. As Hippocrates said, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. And let Dr. Ron's Ultra Pure Nutritionals be the remedy for you. Available only at www.drrons.com.
All right, well, usually this is the point of the show where we do around the NBA in 5, but we had such great conversations with these guys that we didn't even have time for it. So I'm just going to tell you quickly about American Farmers Network. A consumer should always know where their food comes from and the standards that should be adhered to. And American Farmers Network meats are produced by the network of small family farmers who are committed to the most natural and compassionate approach to ranching. Their production standards go above and beyond even USDA regulations, and all of their certified organic beef is 100% grass-fed. From poultry to pork and, of course, beef, AFN's family ranchers are committed to providing you and your family with the healthiest, most nutritious meat so you can live the healthy lifestyle in which you have the right to. So what are you waiting for? Log on to AmericanFarmersNetwork.com and eat and live healthy today. That's going to do it for us. We had ESPN's Amin Elhassan on. We had MassLive's Tom Westerholm on. It was a great show. Rich Conti, it was fantastic as always. So I want to thank the music that was provided for the show. Thank Will Rock, Chuck Dietz, Astrovex, and Steph Legrateau. Be sure to follow us on social media. The Twitter handle for this show is Celtics_beat. And you can like Celtics Beat on CLNS Radio on Facebook at facebook.com/CelticsBeat to keep up with the show. I want to thank our guests, thank our sponsors, Linda, Audible, Casper, Dr. Ron's, and American Farmers Network for making all this possible. For our staff writer, Eddie Santiago, program director, Nick Gelso, executive producer, Larry H. Russell, and of course my co-host, Rich Conti, I'm Jared Weiss. We'll be back next week for another edition of Celtics Beat exclusively on CLNS Radio.